We would like to believe that it does not belong to anyone and at the same time belongs to everyone.
Antarctica is a wonderful case study of international collaboration because nobody owns Antarctica. It's sort of a public good, a common good, and there's a high amount of collaboration.
I think it's something like 40 different nations, maybe 50, that have research bases in Antarctica. So there's a lot of research focus, and the scientific data is shared within the scientific community.
Il faut que ce soit absolument démilitarisé.
Presence of nuclear weapons, nuclear tests, nuclear waste is strictly prohibited in Antarctica. So territorial claims made at the beginning of the 20th centuries, the claims were suspended with the introduction of Antarctic Treaty System.
Today we have 56 Antarctic Treaty System members. Only 29 of them has a right to vote. So what is important to understand is that 29 countries in the world decided what is happening here in Antarctica.
We have to comply with that. So in terms of waste, environmental, potential environmental damage, making sure all our operations have no impact.
Cette énergie globale collaborative ne doit pas nous faire oublier ô combien ce continent protégé est vulnérable aux agressions de toutes sortes provenant du reste de la planète.
So it's a well-known fact, scientifically proven, that the Antarctic Peninsula is a warming hotspot. As my daughter and son tell me, you knew 30 years ago about this, and what are we doing about it? Avian influenza has been around for a long time. So in South Georgia, multiple sites are closed right now from visitation, where there's mass mortality in seals and gulls, skuas, etc. We don't know, and we haven't seen elsewhere in the world where we get these penguin colonies with thousands and thousands of penguins in close proximity, what the effect will be. So we hope there is a natural resistance. When the chicks are born now, what we don't know is the chicks will have any resistance. It's unlikely chicks will. Of course, we do have an impact. We're humans. We have an impact everything we do and everywhere we go. Unfortunately, human nature.
If you are not a member of some treaty, this treaty is not covering you. Although they still believe that they have a right to do this. The problem of illegal whaling, for example, is still happening. With the problem of illegal krilling, collecting krill, it's another big problem.
Every krill is the cornerstone species for the entire Antarctic ecosystem. Whales are sort of high-end in the ecosystem, but they're eating krill.
C'est ultra important. Et le phytoplancton, il est très associé au krill qui s'en nourrit. 50% de l'oxygène que l'on respire, vient en fait du phytoplancton.
My name is Julia. I'm a marine scientist on board Roald Amundsen. I did research in marine ecology for 3 years in Portugal, and after that I decided to join as a marine scientist and share my knowledge and my passion for science with people.
I am a glaciologist, meaning that I am specialized in studying the ice from glaciers and ice sheets around the world, and I am generally very interested in how ice and climate interact together.
The projects that we support, part of the basis of it is that the data is open source, so that when the scientists have worked on their data, that it's make sure it's published or shared.
I'm the Science and Education Coordinator on board. So right now we have 6 guest researchers on, support them in their research, logistically, and anything that they may need. We also then support a number of other science projects. So we go out and take samples that we'll send to researchers around the world in a number of different topics.
My name is Paweł Rągies, and I'm from Poland. My background is in history and archaeology.
We're taking water samples. We're measuring the temperature, the salinity, the chlorophyll of those, and we can also measure microplastics, collecting data, really important data about the spread of microplastics.
Inland areas has more than the open ocean in many places.
Researchers have very limited access to the continent and have to pay large amounts of money to come and actually do their science. There's also research stations, which are, again, logistically very complicated. Most research here is done on research vessels.
In Antarctica, tourism has grown in the last 10 years. It's doubled and tripled. So the total number of tourists last year was in the region of 120,000 people, of which 75,000 people were on ships like this that you can get off and you can land.
So we go out with groups of guests in what we call the science boat, and we follow a very strict sampling protocol where we take environmental observations.
Fjord Phyto is a project that aims to study the influence of melting ice on the communities of phytoplankton in Antarctica. And so there are 2 PhD students that are studying how plankton is going to change, phytoplankton communities are going to change due to this increasing of ice melting.
So ice cores are kind of like books about the old climate, and they are drilled into an ice sheet and then retrieved. And each of these tubes contains about a meter long core of ice from a different place in Antarctica. And these freezers obviously are kept at minus 20 to minus 40 degrees Celsius, and they're there to store ice for measurements. CO2 on the top has been kind of varying over time. And at the bottom, we have the temperature that has been reconstructed from the ice splitting. And this really can tell us about the history of our Earth's climate in really great detail. And the first thing that we notice is that CO2 and temperature, these vary kind of hand in hand. And this is kind of a demonstration of the fact that if we have more CO2 in the atmosphere, we will also have hotter temperatures.
Nous commençons à traverser le passage de Drake. On en a pour 2 jours à peu près avant d'arriver sur la péninsule antarctique. Je pense que demain, on aura des creux de 5 à 6 mètres. On devait aller directement vers la baie de Marguerite, mais c'est très loin. Et vu qu'on a été pas mal secoué dans le passage du Drake, on fait un petit arrêt avec une cérémonie vers le cercle polaire antarctique à 66 degrés 34 de latitude sud, dans le Crystal Sound, dans le détroit de Cristal. Et on sera demain dans la baie de Marguerite, après avoir passé le Gueulette.
Plankton comes from the Greek word planktos, which means to drift or to wander. So it's any kind of it's every kind of organism that it's in the water that is actually unable to swim against the current. So they can change maybe their buoyancy. They can go up and down the water column. They can swim a little bit, but they cannot go against the ocean current. And not only they produce the 50% of the oxygen, but they also absorb 30% of the carbon dioxide, CO2, which, as you may know, is involved in climate change. They fight climate change, so they are super important. They are like heroes of this planet.
So the first data sampling that we do is something called Secchi disk. So we basically lower down in the water column a disk called Secchi disk. And then this is a tool to measure the turbidity of the water, which is influenced by different factors, but also by the amount of plankton in an ecosystem. And then we measure at what depth it disappears from sight. And this is a measure of the turbidity, of the clarity of water in that area. We lower down in the water column until a depth of 70 meters. We develop a tool called CTD, which aims to measure the salinity. The C is the conductivity, salinity, T, which is temperature, and then D, which is depth. And also measures chlorophyll. And this enables them to study how the phytoplankton is distributed into the water column, because they have inside the chlorophyll that they use to do the photosynthesis.
It's at 1.5 here, and then it drops down while going down in the water column, this green one. Yeah, it goes to 0 here. So we see that the salinity increases as we go down into the water column. Why do you think it increases?
A bottle to sample the abundance of the plankton, the phytoplankton. So we just fill it with a sample of water, and then they will analyze. Then we have another small bottle which aims to analyze the oxygen isotope in the water.
So 3 times to then the
So oxygen has 2 different kind of isotope, oxygen 16 and oxygen 18. And by analyzing the ratio between these 2 isotopes, they are able to understand how much meltwater there is in that area.
From which they can tell the source of the water, if it's come from recent snow, if it's come from glacial ice or whatnot.
We tie at the end of the Zodiac, and then we tow for 10 minutes this net. And this mesh of 20 microns will filter the phytoplankton from the water. So for 10 minutes we go at very low speed. We have a bottle at the end of the net, and the water will be filtered, and the phytoplankton will then be collected into this bottle.
And what we get back is what we call plankton soup. All of the good stuff has sunk to the bottom. No.
Here we have another, even teeny tinier microplastic.
They also use satellites to see from the space these blooms of phytoplankton, and then we combine with the data from the exact location where we are.
To understand which habitat they like the most and where the population might go as the meltwater changes in the Antarctic environment. So by these guys all staying together, it helps them stay at the surface, it helps them stay in their happy place, and it slows the rate that they sink by increasing the surface area. So the plankton, they don't want to sink because then they don't have enough light and they tend to die. But eventually, they will die and they will sink, and this is a major, major factor in carbon cycling. So these guys take sunlight and CO2, they turn it into oxygen and carbon, organic matter, which then they live their happy little lives, and eventually it will sink down to the seafloor where it will be buried layer after layer after layer, and they will take that carbon with them. So this is a massive carbon sink on a global scale, is our little phytoplankton friends.
Et le phytoplancton a besoin de nutriments pour la photosynthèse, pour se développer. Donc tout ça, c'est hyper lié. Et son moteur principal, surtout ici, de nutriments, c'est le caca de baleine. Les baleines ne font pas caca en profondeur, mais en surface.
Les baleines remontent à la surface pour respirer et rejeter leurs excréments riches en nutriments. Ce sont ces mêmes excréments qui fertilisent le phytoplancton et favorisent sa croissance.
Nous, en fait, on a vécu dans un monde pratiquement sans baleines. Avant la pêche à grande échelle de la baleine, il y en avait absolument partout. Et c'est difficile de reconstituer le schéma des océans de cette époque parce qu'on l'a perdu. Donc, en les éliminant, on a basculé dans une autre dimension et maintenant, on est en train de récupérer tout ça.
Part of that research, they're looking at the health of whales. So they do drone flying over the whales, so they can do 3D imaging of a whale and they can see its health. They can often see its state of, if it's pregnant, if it has a calf. They also take biopsies of the whales, so they can see the DNA. They can really see the state of and how healthy the whale is. They're also doing research into how stressed the whale is from human activity, which is also very important for us. We want to make sure that that we have data that we're having no impact or minimal disturbance on the wildlife.
We just have to add a substance that enables to preserve better the organisms, which is called Lugol. We keep in the fridge and then we will send to the universities for FjordPhyto project. This is a project that is going on since 2015. They will then analyze all this huge amount of data for all these years from different ships and understand if the communities are changing in structure. So, for example, one species is increasing in abundance and other species are decreasing. There is no one answer because it depends a lot on the species. It depends on the location where we're looking for some species. We still have a lot to understand and to learn, and that's why it's very important to collaborate and being involved in such projects like FjordPhyto, because we're really helping to have a better understanding of our surrounding and what is going on.
La préservation de l'écosystème plancton-krill-baleine nécessite des zones marines protégées.
Here we all work together as an industry fleet. So to make decisions on where marine protected areas should be and the activities that take place in there, we need data. And there's very little data in Antarctica. If we weren't to do that, then, as I say, the access for the scientists would be really hard, And then also evident the decision-making processes for policymakers would be a lot harder because they wouldn't have the data.
Une baleine à bosse en lactation a besoin de 3200 kg de krill par jour. Ce krill antarctique, fondamental pour la chaîne alimentaire océanique, est gravement menacé par la surpêche.
Do we need to make food supplements, krill oil, all this type of stuff? Do we need it?
The collecting krill, it's another big problem. And there is issue with enforcing this policy because Antarctic Treaty System should not go against the right of the high sea.
So the negotiations for creation of marine protected areas are going on for years and years and years. And it's kind of obvious, but that we need protection. But China and Russia are blocking creation of areas. There's a lot of really good work, but the treaty parties need to work together and not against each other. And one of the successes of the Antarctic Treaty has been sort of global politics have been put on the back burner. The way the treaty was set up, there needs to be consensus, so everybody needs to agree. And unfortunately, right now, the new sort of political Cold War area is Antarctica. So getting consensus from all nations is very hard.
This is a year when the Antarctic Treaty System, this protocol of protection of the environment to Antarctic Treaty System, is expiring. When they were signing this protocol in the 90s, they understood that in 50 years, the world is going to change, the climate is going to change, the global politics is going to change, and Antarctica as a continent probably also is going to change somehow. So this is a year where they are going to update it. They are going to make it, to renovate it according to the situation which is going to occur in 2048.
En 2048, tout ce qu'on a dit du protocole de Madrid va devenir caduc et on va tout remettre en question. C'est pour ça que tout le monde se dépêche à construire un maximum de bases scientifiques partout en Antarctique, la Chine, les Russes, tout le monde. Même si parfois ça fait vraiment avancer la science, là on est vraiment dans un contexte géopolitique ultra lisible.